Well, good morning, everyone. I say good morning because at time of recording it's 10 past 11, so hence saying I don't know when you're watching this, but I just sent around a video with a bit of a kind of devotional thought. If you cast your mind back to the first lockdown we were in, I maybe did this pretty regularly when there wasn't as much happening. So it was still quite busy in some ways, but there wasn't any meetings going on. But I'm planning to keep doing this actually. One of my thoughts over the holidays was maybe just to once a week send out one of these videos, just a real thought on a passage of the Bible or a verse of the Bible, something for us to think about, not a long sermon, just something for us to reflect on. Do that perhaps about once a week or so. I say that now, hopefully I'll stick to that, but we'll see as time progresses. But I hope everyone is well. I know I haven't seen everyone in a fortnight, but I'm glad to be back. I've had a great holiday and looking forward to getting back into things here. But this morning I was just wanting to look at Psalm 90. Psalm 90, not the whole psalm, but just really to reflect a little bit on the main ideas of the psalm, the main theme, some of the main things that are being said in there. Psalm 90 is entitled in my Bible, From Everlasting to Everlasting. And it's a prayer of Moses, the man of God. So Moses prayed this, wrote the psalm. And the theme of this psalm, the main, if you could say, sort of overarching idea, is the idea that God is eternal. God has always been. There's never been a time where God was not. God is eternal. God is the creator. He's the everlasting one. Whereas we are creatures. We're created beings. We are finite. We are created by God. And we have a limited amount of time on this earth. In Psalm 90, in verses 1 and 2, we see who God is, where it says, Lord, you have been our dwelling place in all generations. Before the mountains were brought forth, or ever you had formed the earth and the world, from everlasting to everlasting, you are God. So there's an amazing description of the God that we know and worship. And when you think about it, what it's saying is that God is, before he even created anything, God was there. He's eternal. He's out of space, he's out of time, he's out with those things, he created those things. So he's always been there. And it also shows us that he is the creator, he's the one who created all things before you had formed the earth and the world. He says before the mountains were brought forth, they were brought forth by God, or you had ever formed the earth and the world, he did the whole thing. From everlasting to everlasting, you are God. So he created everything that we see around us. So that sets the scene for the rest of the psalm, doesn't it? Because that is who God is. And in contrast, this is who we are. Verses 3 and 4, he says, you return man to dust, made us from the dust, and say, return, O children of man, for 1,000 years in your sight, as in God's sight, are but as yesterday when it is past, or as a watch in the night. So time's God's not limited by time in any way. Whereas we are very much time-bound creatures. Verse 5 and 6, speaking of us, says, you sweep them away as with a flood. They are like a dream, like grass that is renewed in the morning. In the morning it flourishes and is renewed. In the evening it fades and withers. We are like the grass of the field. And ongoing he says, for you are brought to an end by your anger, by your wrath we are dismayed. You have set our iniquities before you, our secret sins in the light of your presence. For all our days pass away under your wrath. We bring our years to an end like a sigh. The years of our life are 70, or even by reason of strength 80. Yet their span is but toil and trouble. They are soon gone, and we fly away. So the point he's making there, and I read some verses there that I'm not going to totally delve into just now, but the point that he's making there, Moses writing this said, the years of our life are 70. Some people make 70, and that's good. Others, by reason of strength, 80. I know in our congregation we've got a couple of people who've gone beyond that, some who are even have hit the 90 mark. So you can tell Moses all about that when you see him in glory. But what the point he's making is that when you actually look at our lives, that they're not that long in the grand scheme of things. God is eternal. God's always been there, and he's eternal. But our lives here on earth are much shorter than we think, and we don't like to think about the fact that we're going to die. We don't like to think about our mortality. We like to pretend or we forget about the fact that we are mortal and that we will die at some point. And so in light of that, he says, down in verse 12, he says, so teach us to number our days that we may get a heart of wisdom. So having said, as I said there, we don't like to think about the fact that death and our limited time here on earth. He said, we don't want to talk about that. We don't want to think about that. It's a really, it's a way to stop a conversation, isn't it, to start talking about these things. But in contrast, Moses here and the Bible in general teaches us to think about our mortality, think about the fact that this is not all that it's about, and the fact that we will in fact die at some point. Difficult as that might be, in doing so, in recognizing that, in numbering our days, as Moses says here. Obviously we don't know when that will happen, but we can look around the world, we can look around our country in general and say, well, we know how much time we might have. But help us to number our days so that we may get a heart of wisdom. And what it means by that is to say, teach us to number our days, teach us to think upon that so that we might use the time we have here well. If we just decide not to think about that, we just pretend that that's not coming, we'll just use our days. I know we won't think intentionally about how to spend our days, about how to spend each day, about how to live our lives longer term for God. Whereas if we're numbering our days and saying, I want to live those for Christ, that will help us to think through how best we can use what God has given us in terms of our gifts and resources, and also in terms of just wanting to serve Him each and every day. And I don't mean in necessarily radical, amazing ways. I mean in the everyday faithfulness, those things which the Bible commends. The way we interact with people, the way we live at home, the way we are at work, the way we are with our friends, and looking for opportunities to speak of Jesus and to serve Jesus and to serve His church, and to use the days that we have been given well. So that's the theme of this, I think, and you can read the rest of the psalm for yourself, which I think just backs this up. But it's just a good reminder for us, each of us, however old we are, however young we are, wherever God has placed us, whatever job God has given you to do, whatever family God has given you, whatever community God has placed you in, to say, well, how can I best use the days that God has given me in order to serve Him, in order to live for Him? So let's each of us do that, in a sense, number our days and think, how can I best use this for the Lord? How can I best be utilised for Him? How can I best serve Him and serve my church and serve the people around me and reach people for Christ? So I hope that's helpful, and as I say, I'll hopefully be doing this about once a week, and I'll see some of you on Thursday, some of you on Sunday, and maybe some of you in between along the way. But I hope everyone's doing well, and we'll see you soon.